Carl Jung discovered that the greatest dangers to the human mind are not outside but inside. He identified 7 psychological environments that silently destroy 90% of our mental strength. These are not physical locations, but invisible traps you inhabit every day without realizing the damage they cause. Most people blame themselves for feeling drained, anxious, or lost, but Jung understood the truth. Certain mental spaces literally rewire your brain against you. They shape your thoughts, your emotions, and your decisions. Without awareness, you slowly lose strength, believing fate is against you when it is environment. Jung explained that these psychological places are more dangerous than external obstacles because they grow unnoticed. The longer you stay inside them, the weaker you become. Escape is possible only through recognition. You must see the trap clearly before you can leave and reclaim your inner freedom. These dangerous environments are not rooms you can walk into or escape from physically. They are invisible traps that exist in the mind. You carry them with you into conversations, relationships, and decisions. They shape how you see the world while remaining hidden from your conscious awareness. Because they are invisible, these places feel normal. You may think you are simply living your life, when in fact you are inhabiting a psychological cage. Jung explained that the unconscious disguises these environments as comfort or habit. What feels safe is often the very thing destroying you. The danger of invisible traps is that you cannot fight what you cannot see. You may work harder, change jobs, or end relationships without improvement, because the real prison is inside. Recognizing the mental space you inhabit is the first step towards psychological freedom and growth. Jung taught that escaping these environments is the foundation of psychological sovereignty. As long as you remain trapped inside them, your choices are not your own. Your thoughts are manipulated by unseen forces. Freedom begins only when you step out of these hidden spaces and reclaim your inner authority. Escaping does not mean running away from life. It means learning to recognize when you are caught in an unhealthy mental environment and choosing differently. Jung emphasized that sovereignty comes from awareness. When you know where you are mentally, you can decide whether to stay or to leave. Without escape, your mind shrinks under the weight of these traps. With escape, you grow into wholeness. Sovereignty means your decisions align with your authentic self, not with unconscious programming. Jung believed that humanity's future depends on individuals brave enough to leave these toxic places behind. The first dangerous place Jung identified is the echo chamber. Here, every voice around you reflects your own beliefs back to you until they feel like absolute truth. Surrounded only by agreement, your mind slowly weakens. Critical thinking atrophies like unused muscles left to waste away. At first, the echo chamber feels comfortable. Agreement creates the illusion of safety. But Jung warned that safety without challenge is poison. When no one questions your assumptions, your worldview grows rigid and fragile. Different perspectives start to feel threatening instead of stimulating, and your mental strength declines. Warning signs include conversations that always reinforce your opinions, predictable responses from friends, and fear of being wrong. In the echo chamber, growth stops. Instead of expanding, your mind shrinks. Jung called this collective possession, when group thinking replaces individual thought, erasing authenticity in favor of conformity. Jung described the echo chamber as a state of collective possession. In this condition, the group's opinions dominate your thinking so completely that you stop questioning. To doubt feels like betrayal. You unconsciously trade individuality for belonging, surrendering the freedom to think independently in exchange for fragile safety. Collective possession rewires your identity around group loyalty. You echo the same phrases, share the same fears, and attack anyone who challenges the narrative. Instead of growing, you become smaller, more dependent on the group. Jung warned that collective possession destroys authenticity and leaves you psychologically enslaved. The more time spent in this state, the weaker the individual becomes. Confidence fades, creativity withers, and courage disappears. Jung believed collective possession was one of the most dangerous forces in society because it erases the self. Escaping it requires courage to stand apart from the crowd. You know you are trapped in an echo chamber when every conversation feels predictable. You can finish people's sentences before they speak. Different opinions feel dangerous rather than interesting. Instead of curiosity, you feel defensiveness. Agreement is automatic, while questioning feels like rebellion that risks losing acceptance and safety. Another warning sign is that you stop asking yourself, "What if I am wrong?" Critical reflection disappears, replaced by rigid certainty. The group's comfort becomes more important than truth. You measure loyalty by sameness. Slowly, your mind becomes dependent on external reinforcement instead of internal reasoning or authentic judgment. Perhaps the clearest sign is exhaustion when faced with difference. Instead of seeing new perspectives as opportunities for growth, you retreat into familiar circles. Jung warned that this is the point where the echo chamber truly destroys you. Your identity shrinks until conformity becomes your only form of survival. The second dangerous place Jung described is the comparison arena. Here your worth is measured not by who you are, but by how you rank against others. Every achievement becomes meaningless if someone else does it better. Success stops feeling like fulfillment and turns into constant proof of inadequacy. Living in the comparison arena rewires the brain to search for flaws. You stop asking what brings joy and begin asking how you compare. Someone's victory becomes your defeat. Instead of celebrating progress, you feel empty. Jung warned this trap destroys authenticity because your life becomes performance for approval. The comparison arena fuels endless dissatisfaction. No matter what you accomplish, there will always be someone with more wealth, beauty, or recognition. Happiness becomes impossible because it depends on being ahead of others. In this space, your true desires vanish, replaced by desperate competition that leaves you hollow. Jung explained that the comparison arena traps you in the inflation-deflation cycle. When you feel ahead, the ego inflates with superiority. But the moment someone surpasses you, you collapse into deflation and inferiority. Your sense of self swings wildly, never steady, never rooted in authentic inner worth or stability. This cycle is exhausting because it never ends. Even victory carries anxiety, knowing someone else will eventually outdo you. Jung saw that people in this trap live as prisoners of status. Their value rises and falls with external measures, leaving them psychologically fragile and unable to feel complete. The inflation-deflation cycle destroys peace because it disconnects you from yourself. Instead of pursuing joy, you chase recognition. Instead of grounding in authenticity, you chase superiority. Jung warned that escaping this trap requires breaking free from comparison entirely, rediscovering value in being rather than endlessly measuring against others. You know you are trapped in the comparison arena when someone else's success makes you feel like a failure. Instead of celebrating their progress, you experience resentment or shame. Achievements that once felt meaningful suddenly collapse because they are not bigger, faster, or more impressive than others. Another warning sign is emptiness after reaching a goal. You achieve something important, but instead of joy, you feel disappointment because someone did it sooner or better. Recognition becomes addictive yet unsatisfying. Your happiness depends entirely on being ahead rather than being authentic, leaving you perpetually restless inside. You may also notice yourself editing your life to match appearances rather than truth. Social media highlights become your standard, and authenticity is replaced with performance. Jung warned that this is the essence of the comparison trap. You no longer pursue what brings joy, only what brings recognition. The third dangerous place Jung identified is the performance theater. This is any environment where masks are rewarded and authenticity is punished. You learn to laugh at jokes you dislike, agree with ideas you oppose, and hide every part of yourself that does not fit the group's expectations. In the performance theater, belonging is conditional. Approval is given only when you play the role demanded of you. Vulnerability becomes dangerous because showing your true feelings risks rejection. Over time, the mask you wear becomes heavy, but you convince yourself it is safer than being real. Jung warned that the performance theater is deadly to the soul because it trains you to betray yourself gradually. Each compromise feels small, but together they erase your core identity. Eventually, you forget who you are behind the mask and lose touch with authenticity completely. Jung called this trap persona identification, the moment when the mask you wear to please others becomes the only self you recognize. At first you know it is performance, but gradually you lose awareness of the difference. The mask fuses with your identity until authenticity feels like a stranger. When persona identification takes over, you no longer ask what you want or believe. You measure yourself by how well you perform the role. Approval becomes oxygen. Rejection feels like death. Jung explained that this is not living but acting, a constant performance that erases the deeper self. The danger of persona identification is that it seems successful. Society rewards you for fitting in, for playing the part perfectly. But inside you feel empty, disconnected, and exhausted. Jung warned that the longer you live only as the persona, the harder it becomes to recover authenticity. A clear warning sign you are trapped in the performance theater is exhaustion after social interactions. Instead of feeling energized by connection, you feel drained because every conversation requires effort to maintain the mask. Authenticity restores energy, but performance steals it, leaving you tired and empty at the core. Another sign is catching yourself agreeing with things you do not believe. You nod, smile, and pretend to fit in even when your inner voice protests. Each false agreement feels small, but they accumulate into self-betrayal. Over time you forget what you truly think or desire. The strongest warning sign is fear of honesty. You hesitate to share your real feelings because they might disrupt the script others expect you to follow. Jung warned that when honesty feels dangerous, you have surrendered to the performance theater, living a costume instead of a real life. The fourth dangerous place Jung described is the silent suffering space. This is often found in families or groups where emotional needs are ignored and feelings are never expressed. On the surface, everything appears calm and stable, but beneath the silence grows loneliness, emptiness, and unresolved pain. In these environments, love is assumed but rarely spoken. Problems are hidden to preserve appearances. Conflict is avoided at all costs, but so is intimacy. Jung explained that silence does not erase emotional needs. Instead, it starves the psyche. Unspoken hunger turns into anxiety, depression, and quiet despair. The danger of silent suffering is that it feels normal. You believe stability means health because there is no open conflict. Yet peace built on suppression is fragile. Jung warned that when feelings remain buried, they return through symptoms, addictions, or sudden outbursts. Silence becomes a prison disguised as harmony. Jung described silent suffering as emotional starvation. Just as the body weakens without food, the psyche deteriorates without authentic expression of needs. Suppressed feelings do not vanish. They sink into the unconscious where they generate anxiety, depression, and emptiness. Emotional starvation quietly drains vitality until the soul feels barren. In emotionally starved environments, people learn to hide pain behind politeness. They present perfect families or stable relationships while secretly aching inside. Jung warned that repression masquerades as peace but actually breeds fragility. A single moment of honesty can shatter the illusion, exposing how little connection truly exists. Emotional starvation is dangerous because it convinces you that wanting support is weakness. You begin to believe your needs are selfish. Over time you disconnect from your inner life completely. Jung emphasized that healing requires breaking silence, voicing truth, and restoring nourishment through genuine emotional connection and honesty. A warning sign you are trapped in silent suffering is feeling lonely even when surrounded by people. The absence of conflict is mistaken for closeness, yet your emotional needs remain unmet. Jung observed that this false harmony creates deep isolation disguised as stability and leaves the heart malnourished. Another sign is coping instead of healing. You distract yourself, minimize your feelings, or stay silent to preserve appearances. Rather than confronting pain, you bury it. Jung taught that repression never heals wounds. It only hides them until they resurface through anxiety, depression, or sudden emotional breakdowns. Silent suffering also creates peace that feels brittle. You fear that one honest conversation could shatter everything. Stability becomes fragile because it is built on denial. Jung explained that true harmony requires vulnerability. If honesty feels dangerous, you are not safe. You are simply surviving behind emotional walls. The fifth dangerous place Jung described is the chaos storm. This is the mental environment where constant stimulation drowns out your inner voice. You fill every moment with news, conversations, or activity. Silence feels unbearable, so you keep running, never allowing yourself to pause or listen within. Jung observed that this addiction to stimulation fragments the psyche. Your attention becomes scattered, your thoughts disorganized. You gather enormous amounts of information but fail to integrate it into wisdom. Instead of clarity, you feel restless and overwhelmed. The chaos storm leaves you drained, yet craving more noise. The danger of the chaos storm is its false sense of productivity. You feel busy, informed, and engaged, but inside you are disconnected. Jung warned that wisdom emerges only in stillness. Without silence, you lose the capacity to hear your deeper self and integrate authentic meaning into life. Jung described the chaos storm as psychic fragmentation. When your attention is constantly scattered, your inner world loses cohesion. Thoughts no longer connect, emotions feel chaotic, and decisions become impulsive. Instead of a unified psyche, you live with fragments that never integrate into a stable sense of self. Psychic fragmentation leaves you feeling restless even in quiet moments. The nervous system becomes addicted to stimulation, craving more noise to feel normal. Jung explained that the psyche cannot heal when divided. Only by reclaiming silence and focus can you gather the scattered pieces and restore psychological wholeness. The longer you remain in fragmentation, the more fragile your mind becomes. Memory weakens, clarity fades, and wisdom disappears. Jung warned that constant stimulation does not protect you from pain. It prevents you from processing it. Healing requires turning towards stillness, not drowning it in endless distraction. A warning sign you are trapped in the chaos storm is constant busyness. You fill every hour with tasks, entertainment, or conversation. Productivity becomes a disguise for avoidance. Jung explained that endless activity masks unresolved pain. You appear engaged with life, but inside you are running from yourself. Another sign is anxiety when silence appears. The moment the noise fades, uneasiness rises. You reach for your phone, music, or news to escape inner stillness. Jung taught that this reaction signals disconnection. Instead of comfort, quiet feels threatening because it exposes emotions and truths you have avoided. You may also notice strong opinions about everything, but deep understanding of nothing. Attention scattered across countless inputs leaves no space for reflection. Jung warned that in the chaos storm, you consume information constantly but feel empty. Knowledge without integration is noise, and noise fragments the soul. The sixth dangerous place Jung identified is the self-abandonment chamber. This is where you systematically ignore your own needs and instincts. You say yes when every part of you wants to say no. You stay in situations that drain you because pleasing others feels safer than honoring yourself. Jung explained that self-abandonment happens gradually. Each compromise looks small, but together they hollow you out. Over time you stop listening to your own desires entirely. Decisions are made to avoid conflict or meet expectations. Instead of living authentically, you live as a projection of what others demand. The danger of this chamber is that society often rewards it. You are praised for being responsible, mature, or selfless. Yet beneath the surface you feel empty and resentful. Jung called this betrayal of the soul. By abandoning yourself, you trade authenticity for approval and lose your essence. Jung described chronic self-abandonment as soul loss. This is not mystical but psychological, the gradual estrangement from your own core self. When you silence your instincts and ignore your feelings repeatedly, the connection to inner truth breaks. You begin living as a hollow shell rather than a whole person. Soul loss leaves you feeling disconnected from vitality. You forget what excites you, what brings joy, or even what you want. Jung observed that people in this state often say they feel like strangers in their own lives. They succeed outwardly, but inwardly feel lifeless and fragmented. The tragedy of soul loss is that it masquerades as responsibility. You may be admired for your sacrifices, yet inside you are starving. Jung warned that recovery requires reclaiming the abandoned self. Healing begins when you listen again to your inner voice and honor its truth without fear. A clear warning sign of self-abandonment is living on autopilot. You move through routines without passion or direction. Days blur together because you are no longer guided by authentic desires. Jung explained that autopilot is the symptom of a deeper loss, the disconnection from your own inner compass. Another sign is making decisions based entirely on expectations. You choose what others want, what seems practical, or what avoids conflict, even when it contradicts your truth. Over time, you lose the ability to sense what feels right. Jung warned that constant compromise erodes your authentic identity. The most subtle sign is forgetting your own preferences. You no longer know what food, music, or activities bring joy. You say you do not care because your instincts have been silenced for too long. Jung called this soul amnesia, the quiet disappearance of the self beneath endless compliance. The seventh and most dangerous place Jung identified is the shadow basement. This is where you bury the parts of yourself you fear, reject, or cannot accept. Repressed memories, shameful experiences, and forbidden traits are locked away here, hidden from the light of consciousness, but still alive within you. Jung warned that what you repress does not disappear. In the darkness of the shadow basement, it grows stronger. Buried anger returns as sudden rage. Denied shame turns into self-sabotage. Unacknowledged pain becomes projection onto others. The unconscious contents you hide gain power precisely because they remain unseen. This basement is dangerous because you believe avoiding it keeps you safe. In truth, repression makes you a prisoner of your hidden self. Jung explained that healing requires entering the shadow basement with honesty and compassion. Only by facing what you reject can you reclaim its energy for growth. Jung described the danger of repression as shadow possession. When you refuse to face the hidden parts of yourself, they begin to control you unconsciously. You lash out without reason, sabotage relationships, or repeat toxic patterns. The shadow you avoided takes the wheel, steering your life from the darkness. Shadow possession explains why people find themselves becoming what they most despise. The traits you condemn in others are often the very qualities you deny in yourself. Jung observed that judgment is projection, a mirror of the disowned shadow. Until integrated, the rejected self secretly dictates your behavior. This state is dangerous because it feels uncontrollable. You blame fate, chance, or other people, not realizing the enemy lives inside. Jung insisted that the solution is not suppression, but integration. By confronting and accepting the shadow, you reclaim power. What once controlled you becomes a source of strength. A clear warning sign you are trapped in the shadow basement is constant overreaction. Small triggers set off disproportionate anger or sadness. Jung explained that these eruptions are not about the present moment, but about repressed material breaking through. The shadow forces itself into consciousness when ignored for too long. Another sign is repeating toxic patterns even when you know better. You promise yourself not to choose the same destructive relationships or behaviors, yet you return again and again. Jung observed that this is the shadow acting out unconsciously, pulling you back into unresolved wounds until you face them. Harsh judgment of others is also a warning sign. You condemn traits in people that secretly exist in yourself. Jung called this projection, the unconscious attempt to exile your own flaws by attacking them externally. The stronger the judgment, the clearer the sign that your shadow is in control. Jung taught that you cannot leave a psychological trap until you first recognize it. Conscious recognition means naming the place you are in. Whether it is the echo chamber, the comparison arena, or the shadow basement, simply identifying it pulls the unconscious pattern into awareness and weakens its grip. Most people remain trapped because they never admit where they are. They call anxiety stress or label emptiness as laziness. Jung explained that denial keeps the unconscious in control. By naming the environment, you transform fate into choice. Recognition is the first act of reclaiming psychological freedom and sovereignty. The moment you say out loud, "This is the comparison arena," or "This is the chaos storm," you create distance. You are no longer fully inside the trap, but observing it from the outside. That shift of perspective is the doorway to escape and conscious transformation. Jung advised that once you recognize the trap, the next step is an environmental audit. This means examining both physical and digital spaces you enter daily. Ask yourself whether these environments help you grow or keep you small. Each space either nourishes your psyche or poisons it silently over time. Toxic spaces are not limited to rooms. They include social media feeds, workplaces, family dynamics, and even friendships. Jung explained that these environments program the unconscious. If they reward masks, comparison, or noise, they are destroying you. Awareness allows you to decide whether to remain or withdraw consciously. Conducting an audit requires brutal honesty. You must ask if this environment aligns with your values or feeds illusions. Jung emphasized that once you see clearly, you cannot unsee. Awareness forces choice. The audit is not about blame, but about reclaiming authority over the psychological landscapes you inhabit. After recognition and audit, Jung advised strategic withdrawal. This does not mean abandoning your entire life, but consciously reducing exposure to toxic spaces. You may limit time in draining social circles, step back from manipulative relationships, or reduce digital noise. Small withdrawals create space for clarity and inner strength. Jung explained that strategic withdrawal is not avoidance, but self-protection. Just as the body needs rest from toxins, the psyche requires distance from environments that erode authenticity. Each boundary you set preserves energy. Withdrawal is a declaration that your mind is too valuable to waste on psychological poison. The key is balance. Withdrawal is not permanent isolation. It is a temporary step to restore sovereignty. Jung taught that when you remove yourself from destructive spaces, your nervous system recalibrates. From that calm center, you can decide which environments deserve your presence and which must be left behind. Withdrawal alone is not enough. Jung emphasized conscious integration, the active creation of environments that nurture authenticity. This means seeking spaces where truth is valued over performance, where challenge sharpens thought instead of silencing it, and where connection is built on honesty rather than appearances or fragile conformity. Healthy environments act as psychological nourishment. They invite you to speak openly, think critically, and live authentically. Jung explained that integration transforms the unconscious into an ally. By surrounding yourself with growth-oriented people and spaces, you reshape your default patterns toward wholeness, strength, and inner sovereignty instead of fear. Integration requires intention. You choose conversations that expand rather than shrink your mind. You cultivate friendships where needs can be expressed without shame. Jung taught that creating these environments is not selfish, it is survival. Conscious integration ensures that the psyche thrives in truth rather than withers in illusion. Jung believed that without shadow work, you will unconsciously recreate toxic environments everywhere you go. Shadow work means facing the parts of yourself you have buried, the anger, shame, fear, and pain you rejected. By bringing them into awareness, you reduce their power and reclaim lost energy. Avoidance gives the shadow control. Integration transforms it into strength. Jung explained that unacknowledged anger becomes destructive, but integrated anger becomes assertiveness. Denied sadness becomes depression, but integrated sadness becomes compassion. Every repressed trait hides potential waiting to be redeemed. Shadow work converts poison into medicine for the psyche. This process requires courage and patience. It may involve journaling, therapy, or deep reflection. Jung emphasized approaching the shadow not with judgment, but with curiosity and compassion. By accepting what you once rejected, you become whole. Shadow work is the heart of individuation and the path to real freedom. Jung taught that escaping once is not enough. These psychological places are seductive. Echo chambers offer belonging, comparison promises motivation, performance brings approval, and silence masquerades as peace. Regular maintenance means remaining vigilant. You must continually ask whether the spaces you inhabit strengthen or weaken your authentic self. Maintenance requires daily awareness. Notice when you slip back into busyness to avoid silence, or when you agree to something that betrays your truth. Jung explained that freedom is never permanent. It is a practice. Choosing growth over comfort again and again is the essence of psychological sovereignty. The danger of neglecting maintenance is relapse. Without vigilance, you drift back into the same toxic spaces disguised as normal life. Jung insisted that real transformation lasts only when guarded with discipline. Regular self-reflection ensures you remain free, whole, and aligned with your authentic purpose each day. Jung observed that leaving toxic spaces heals more than the individual. When you reclaim authenticity, the ripple spreads to everyone connected to you. Family dynamics shift, friendships evolve, and workplaces transform. Your courage to step out of illusion gives others silent permission to do the same without asking. The patient Jung treated saw this ripple clearly. His withdrawal from silent suffering inspired his sister to share feelings she had hidden for years. His father admitted long-denied depression. Authenticity proved contagious. By breaking the cycle in himself, he disrupted dysfunction in his family and created room for healing. This ripple effect extends into communities. Authenticity challenges conformity. Honesty weakens illusion, and courage invites growth. Jung explained that individuation is never selfish because the self and the collective are deeply connected. When you liberate yourself from destructive environments, you help liberate others trapped inside the same patterns. Jung explained that when one person chooses authenticity, dysfunctional systems can no longer remain unchanged. False harmony shatters, hidden pain surfaces, and old roles lose their power. Authenticity acts like light in a dark room. It forces denial into visibility, demanding that systems either evolve into honesty or collapse. This process is often uncomfortable. Families resist new boundaries, colleagues resent broken masks, and communities push back against change. Yet Jung taught that discomfort is proof of transformation. Systems built on repression cannot survive authenticity. They must either adapt to truth or dissolve entirely, making space for healthier patterns. Authenticity destabilizes illusion but stabilizes life. When false structures crumble, what remains is real connection. Jung observed that genuine relationships can withstand honesty, while fragile ones fall away. This natural sorting strengthens the individual and the group. Authenticity becomes the catalyst that purifies environments and reveals who truly belongs. Jung believed that psychological freedom in individuals forms the foundation of collective transformation. When people escape toxic environments and reclaim authenticity, society itself begins to change. Every liberated mind weakens the grip of unconscious conformity. Transformation spreads outward, showing that personal growth is inseparable from cultural evolution and healing. Collective change does not begin with governments or institutions. It begins with individuals daring to break free from mental prisons. Jung explained that the unconscious patterns ruling humanity dissolve only when enough people refuse to live by them. Psychological sovereignty becomes a revolutionary act that redefines the collective future. Jung saw individuation as humanity's hope. Authentic individuals influence the collective by embodying truth. Their courage to live consciously forces culture to evolve. Every step toward freedom is a step toward a healthier world. Psychological freedom is not private luxury, but public service, the seed of collective transformation.